Hi guys, I'm Dan.
And I'm Ben.
We are the two peas in a pod, and let's be quite honest, we're thinking drop pod here. We thought we would record this so that you guys get a chance to hear a little bit about us, why we're doing the podcast, what we do in the hobby, and hopefully decide to join us on our hobby journey and the kind of crazy experiment and voyage of discovery that is a podcast. So, Ben, we said we'd start off with our first issue of White Dwarf, and I know today you've got a big pile of White Dwarfs. So
I do. I've got them all off my shelf. Yeah, so I suppose there's two first editions of White Dwarf, isn't there, mate? There's the one that you borrow from your mate and have a good read of, and then there's the one that you actually go out and buy first time. So the first one I saw was the one with the Space Wolf Terminator on the front, and it was the release of the Space Wolf Codex. And for me,
are you sure? 'Cause didn't that just put you straight off the hobby?
Ah, no, mate, it was absolutely amazing, and reading through that got me into the hobby big time, and so I begged my dad to get the White Dwarf, and the first one I picked up was the issue 178 back in 1994, with the Hero Quest Barbarian on the front, kicking some ass, and it's a great issue. It's got some awesome stuff in it, including the release of the Eldar jet bike, which we were discussing the other day. It's still it's still in use, which is pretty cool. But it's got loads of stuff in there, Blood Bowl articles, and a great battle report between the Orcs and the Empire. So yeah, that was the one that got me into the hobby. Over to you. I mean, I think your first one's an absolute classic, Dan.
Yeah. So the first issue that I picked up, 225. So back in 1998, I think August or September time, 1998. September. So that one had in it Warhammer Fantasy Dogs of War released. There was a Tale of Many Gamers going on. There was Dungeon Bowl in there. There was a picture of things to come, which was Battlefleet Gothic. Distinctly remember Paul Sawyer's Beastman Army, and even now, I still keep wanting to do Tale of Many Gamers, and that's something that we were both excited about doing. So yeah,
we're hoping to do
the first one. And just before, of course, the big one for me, which was 226, which was the release of 3rd edition 40k, which started something off a little bit mental, really, and it's been like that ever since. So there was a free Dark Elder on the front, which I think the other day you said to me, I said I went around gathering them up from my friends to save money, and then said, I should have kept doing that. And you said, what, stealing from your mates?
That's the best way to build the hobby, according to you, isn't it?
Yeah, stealing models off your mates. Hoovering up the leftover. Great thing is, when you're only sort of 11, loads of people get into it, don't they? And then about 15, they go, oh, quick, beer and girls. Well, I, being really, really sad, didn't bother with beer or girls at 15 and waited a bit, hoovered up all the free miniatures that they were throwing away, and then went for the beer and completely failed with the girls. So, well, until I got married, of course.
Yeah. Success in the end, and a great success it was.
It certainly was.
I was just looking at the second edition of White Dwarf. For me was 180, and on the front of that is Khorne Berserker plastic model, which I happened to find in a box the other day, and I'll be painting up and popping on our Facebook page for people to have a look at.
You're going to paint up a Chaos model. Fantastic.
I am going to paint up a Chaos model. I have lowered myself that far for this podcast. Alrighty, so we were going to move on to talk about our first models. First models are always pretty special, and Dan, I think you were telling me the other day that yours was a painting set, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So I bought the Ultramarines painting set from... It was actually the 2nd edition models that were in that one, even though I never really played 2nd edition 40k. And I distinctly remember very early on it came out that I would be an impatient painter. So after painting the first guy with a brush, I picked the other dude up, turned him upside down, dunked him in the ultramarine blue, pulled him out, and then wiped off the excess with a brush. I then did all the details, took it in to show my friend Mike. Really, really proud, over the moon.
promptly
He
passed out
said
on the
that
table.
looks absolutely dire. And, and the paint on that model quite literally filled in the gap between the head and the shoulder pads, which was...
That's practicing gap filling early.
Yeah, well, in counterpoint to what we were saying earlier about how to save money, that was definitely not saving money on paint.
No.
And Duncan Rhodes now, with his two thin coats, he would be absolutely disgusted.
Oh, but we've all been there. We've all been there. We've all put the multiple layers on and oversprayed the model and all sorts of problems.
People have been there, Ben, but let's be realistic. Did you ever think it was a good idea to turn a model upside down and dunk him in the pot?
No, I can't say that has ever occurred to me. But,
No.
but there are whole paint ranges based on that preset.
Visionary is how that is described.
Yeah, I got Army Painter. Clearly was following your cue.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they came up with the dipping models. So
what about you then, mate? Go on then, first set.
Yeah, mine was a Bretonian Knight that I bought from Games Workshop Plymouth because my grandparents lived down near Plymouth and I lived up in Buckingham. It was an odd time for the hobby because there was a lot of bad press about Dungeons and Dragons. There'd been a few suicides and my parents associated the two, quite rightly I should think, and were a bit reluctant to let me in the store, but in I went, and the bug was caught, and I bought a little Bretonian Knight that's long gone now. It was a very simple model, but it was back when the horses were made of brown plastic, so it was quite, I think, before a lot of changes in the hobby, I suppose. I think it was way before I bought my first White Dwarf, maybe 2 or 3 years before I got my first White Dwarf.
Well, and now, Bretonians don't even exist.
Hush now. Hush.
That's how
you don't want to...
They have been lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, there's a few people currently getting salty listening to that.
Yeah, sorry guys, sorry. Cool, so... That's quite cool. What about so that first multi-part plastic kit then? What was your first one, mate?
Oh, my first multi-part plastic kit was the second edition box set. It was on a
that is
2-page...
pushing the boundaries of multi-part.
I know. There was a bolt gun and a backpack to add on to the centre body, I'll have you know.
Excellent.
That was in a 2-page spread in the White Dwarf back then. There was a huge, massive advert for it in the second White Dwarf I got, and I just absolutely obsessed over it. Saved up for ages, and then went and got it. Had to drive miles because there wasn't so many Games Workshops in the 1990s. And then spent the next 3 or 4 summers painting it, and I still never managed to finish painting the damn thing. There were so many models in it.
You know what you needed to do?
Dunk it in the paint pot.
Dip them in the pot. Dip them in. I heard B&Q do a lovely range of gloss paints.
They do.
Yeah,
They do.
really good for that.
If they'd have done it in Space Wolf Grey, I might have considered it.
Well, yeah. Only because you're a heathen. But there we are. I suppose that leads nicely into favourite force then.
Well, I think mine's a clear winner. It's Space Wolves every single day of the week. I'm afraid.
No, I completely... To be honest, I've had Space Wolf Army in the past, and Bill King's books, the Ragnar Blackmane sort of story of him moving his way up through...
Monumental
fantastic
series.
Yeah,
benchmark
groundbreaking
series.
Really. Some of the really early stuff really from Black Library, and it really good.
Yeah,
really,
and
really
I think
good.
It wasn't. He was one of the first people, other than Ian Watson Space Marines, to really cover the selection and creation of a Space Marine. And for it to be Space Wolves, wow, it's just amazing. And I don't think I'll ever...
Do you not find though that at night you lie awake wishing that you were an Ultramarine?
No, because I'd spend the whole of my life polishing my armour and looking pretty rather than kicking the crap out of aliens. So.
No, come on, that's clearly the blooding. Right, the Ultramarines are 100% the best force in Warhammer 40,000. They are the epitome. Right, so you tell me, what is a Space Marine, Ben? You tell me, because I know you love Space Marines.
Space Marine. Well, the Space Marine comes in many different flavours, and clearly the best form of Space Marine is one that is raised, selected, and bred on an ice planet, where the whole world's out to try and kill them.
That's enough, because we don't want people listening. At its fundamental level, a Space Marine is a superhuman warrior crafted by the Emperor to defend mankind against the myriad horrors of the universe. They know no fear, and they are utterly badass. And
so not an Ultramarine
for me. No, I'm sorry. The Ultramarines for me, dude, they epitomise what it is to be a space. They don't need no flashy stuff. They aren't running around going, "Ooh, I got bitten by a wolf. Shit, it's a full moon." You know, they're just out there being Space Marines, which is good enough. It's good enough. It's right. We've established I'm right. You're not. Let's move on.
We are going to come back to
we
this.
can start a poll. We can start a poll on the blog or the Facebook page or whichever technological forum we go for when we've done the appropriate chanting. And
dude, you know I'm going to win that poll.
Yeah, but you cannot create multiple Facebook accounts, all called like Wolfen 1, Wolfen 2, and then go in and vote. That is completely unfair. We won't talk about that. Right. Thing is, mate, you know, it wouldn't take much urging for me to do a Space Wolf army anyway, so it's all in good fun. It's all in good fun. There's no army burning here.
Right, so I think we move swiftly on to how we got into the hobby, which we've kind of sort of covered with the White Dwarfs, but you know, the White Dwarf is as a starting point. But for me, I got into the hobby, wargaming particularly, playing Space Hulk on my friend's carpet in his front room. He had a floral carpet with sort of gaps between the flowers that ended up being corridors, and we spent hours playing.
Well, that's a different, you know, that's a more cost-effective approach to Zone Mortalis, isn't it?
And absolutely had nothing to do with the rules of Space Hulk at all. I can guarantee that. They were made up as we went along with a bunch of models that his brother had, and we loved every minute of it. And that's what got me into the hobby. So, excellent. How about yourself?
So, good friend of mine, Mike Colpin, down in the West Country, down nearer you now. I remember him showing me a copy of White Dwarf, and then I remember someone gave me a bag of Space Orcs, a carrier bag, literally, of painted Space Orcs, and Mike used to come round, and we'd set them up, and we had 2 upturned ends of polystyrene packaging from a printer that my dad had bought, and I painted one bright yellow. I don't know why, but I just did. And we used to fight over those, and honestly, I do not know what rules we used, but it was interesting because Mike won a lot, and he was the one that knew all the rules.
Yeah, I see.
And it's only on reflection that seems strange to me.
But back then, upside down polystyrene packaging was the go-to scenery. And when you bought models, they came in that remember that polystyrene little segmented boxes.
Yes, I do.
And I used to break the edges off and paint them grey, and that was my scenery for at least a decade.
I think they even put that. There was articles in White Dwarf and in even in one of the terrain making books with that very method in. But it's interesting, and we will definitely come back to this at some point in the podcast. Ben and I just both worked for Games Workshop, and I think sometimes when first on the starter box set, you know, needing to build an army, you try and give someone the whole hobby to start with, but actually when you reflect on how I got into the hobby, I had a bag of badly painted orcs, carrier bag off my mate, and then you fast forward 18 years, and I'm sat
and
in
some
a room,
polystyrene,
and some polystyrene, and I'm sat in a room surrounded by the hobby. I've fully engaged and immersed myself in the Games Workshop hobby and wargaming as a whole, and I didn't start off with a starter set. I started off with a carrier bag full of badly painted orcs, you know. So let's all go out there and just start posting a bit like Christian Aid, but we'll post part painted models through people's doors. And that's how we'll do it. That's the growth. That is the future. That is it. Maybe not. I just start encouraging people.
Probably not a great idea.
People to go out there and start just posting warriors through people's doors.
They'll start arresting you as a model dealer. It's more expensive than drugs. You know it is.
Yes, it
Plastic
is.
crack.
It is.
So the next thing we were going to move on to is talk about actually what we're kind of excited for the future, what our vision is, what we'd really like to achieve in the
Ben
hobby.
would like to be an ultramarine. That's his vision.
Uh-huh.
Forward, sons of Gilliman. No, not you. You've got a beard. Get out. Savages are over in the left corner.
Gilliman wish he could grow a beard. That's all I'm going to say.
Gilliman had a beard, but then he was so flipping awesome it burned it off. He was just radiating badassery, and it burned away his beard.
Or he walked through the door, saw Corferin, and it all fell out when he got beaten up.
Oh my god! Don't get me started on Corferin. Oh my god! Quick, move on. What were we even talking about?
So hobby vision. Yeah, my one of my hobby visions for a long time was to have a company of Space Marines painted up, which I achieved not so many years ago. And I suppose the next hobby vision, the next thing on my really want to achieve list is probably a bit big, but I think it's one that a lot of people share, and that's to have a dedicated space with enough room to set a table up very quickly and all my models and books on the shelf, so it would take me very little time to get set up and start playing without having to wait for the kids to go to bed so that my Space Wolves don't lose appendages and have their heads bitten off. And crack on and play a game whenever I have the free time.
Yeah,
which isn't much of it at the moment.
Yeah, I echo that, man. To be honest, I'd love to go a bit beyond that, really, and set up a gaming space. There's a lot of them now, and they're all, some of them, they vary, don't they? Some are fantastic, some are just starting out. I'd love to do one with a real theme to it. I think it's the sort of thing, be winning the lottery to bring that about. But it's
you're just too obsessed with Warhammer World.
Yeah, I love Warhammer World, though. I go there all the time because it's brilliant, and it's not that far from where I am. So when I say not that far, it's an hour and a half away. But I think that's just basically in the same neighbourhood, really, when it's Warhammer World. But more than that, I think it's about generating a community. I'd really like, as a vision, help support a community. Be part of a community that you can help enjoy the hobby, and whether that's just being someone that attends events regularly or does a podcast so that people get some ideas and have got something hopefully cool to listen to while they're painting. It's helping people enjoy what is a fantastic hobby, really good, and there's so many aspects of it, and it can be really daunting, or sometimes you get in with a group and what you want to do in the hobby doesn't quite fit. And I think one of the great things hopefully about the podcast, we're going to keep it nice and wide ranging, talk about lots of things, and be really, it sounds mad, be really accepting of everybody's style of hobbying, what they want to do, what they want to get from the Games Workshop or the wider wargaming hobby. And so the podcast makes up part of the vision for me, which it almost sounds a bit, airy-fairy and a bit crazy, really, but it's building a community, being part of supporting the community, and playing a really big game.
Once you've got that community, you can
do anything.
You can bite off bigger chunks, can't you? You can play campaigns, bigger games, apocalypse games, Necromunda campaigns, all sorts.
Obviously,
of stuff.
as well, the other part of that other bit of the vision is I want to play Battlefleet Gothic, but I don't want to actually play. I just want to stand back in an admiral's outfit, like Imperial Navy Admiral, and have Gretchen, like little adjutants that move all my ships, and I can just stand back and be like Emperor class, divine right, 5 degrees, port, fire! And all that shit will be going off, and I'll be loving it. And I'll just stand there. Well, no, I won't. I was going to say I'll stand there real calm and like Admiral-like, but I won't. I'll just be like wigging out. There'll be a lot of excitement going on.
I can't imagine you being calm in a game like that, dude.
Definitely not.
So
Excellent.
I think we've come to the end of our kind of list of things we wanted to talk about in our introduction, really. Apart from why we're doing the podcast, which we've kind of covered a little bit, haven't we? So I don't think we need to go over that again particularly. But
no, I think the last point really is just to say, guys and girls, hopefully, thank you for listening to the two P's in a pod having a chat about who we are and try not to be too boring. Ben and I are really excited about going on this journey now, doing
definitely.
a podcast. Ben's done a cracking piece of artwork to front up the podcast of two very, very mental P's storming out of a drop pod. We'd really like it if you share your hobby. We'd really like it if you put up comments, questions and feedback. And we just want to say thanks very much for coming on the journey with us. We intend to have an awful lot of fun doing it. And we hope you enjoy
Perhaps
listening.
too much fun.
Perhaps too much, yeah. So thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.